Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 131. Scenario Destroyer. Part 1. 200,000 coins have been acquired as compensation for your achievement. We are currently discussing the compensation for the major contributors. After the death of Izumi, Yamada no Orochi's incarnation, the Japanese people immediately surrendered. The collapse of the Absolute Throne loosened the power controlling them, and the hidden anti-disaster people started appearing. Thank you, Kim Dokja. I recognized the speaker's face. The greeting was from one of the Japanese people that Yu Jongyuk visited, just like I found Asaka Ren. I nodded and greeted the speaker. Kazuki Hiroshi. You know me? You got the Totsuka no Tsurugi in a hidden scenario. Ho, that's right. It looks like you heard it from Yu Jongyuk. Of course I didn't hear it from Yu Jongyuk. I was aware of it because I read the original novel. If I remembered correctly, this person had a sponsor related to the myths of Susanoo and Yamada no Orochi. You managed to kill the Sovereign of 8 Heads. Many things have been settled thanks to you. I will surely repay this kindness. Kazuki led the remaining Japanese people and disappeared. The Japanese who chose to become disasters took advantage of the fact that they wouldn't die even when failing the scenario. Izumi was the incarnation of Yamada no Orochi, but Kazuki was also a powerful and clever incarnation. He would be able to lead the incarnations well for the time being after returning to Tokyo Dome. A constellation born from the sea and storm has revealed his modifier. The constellation Snake Cutter has developed a great liking towards you. The constellation Snake Cutter was Susanoo, the original master of the SSS grade item, Totsuka no Tsurugi. I glanced at the Totsuka no Tsurugi that I gave back to Yu Jongyuk. Totsuka no Tsurugi had been greatly damaged. It wasn't strange that it was said to have broken after killing Yamada no Orochi. Yu Jongyuk stared at me and the party members who had fallen asleep after eating the Elaine Forest's vital energy. I thought I was really dead this time. Li Jihai shook her head and held her forehead after waking up. It was because of the blow from directly hearing Yamada no Orochi's true voice. No, what was that? I just heard a few words. I didn't get such a feeling when the commander made a surprise visit. Li Hyunsung was talking only to freeze when he heard the voice behind him. It looks like you're alive, Li Hyunsung. Why Yu Jongyuk SSI? I told you to follow my group. Why didn't you listen? That, Li Hyunsung trembled and glanced my way. It was a face asking me to do something but I couldn't. Yu Jongyuk stared at Li Hyunsung for a while, before turning away. A juicy. I looked around and saw Shin Yusung holding on to me. She looked up at me like she wanted to be picked up. I lightly patted Shin Yusung's back. Was it hard? Well done. You did well. I wanted to say something plausible, but these were the only words I had. Shin Yusung shook her head from within my arms. Hyung, it wasn't that hard. Li Gilyang interrupted and pushed Shin Yusung away from my arms. Despite the arguing, the two children seemed quite familiar with each other. As expected, kids understood kids the best. It was worth leaving the two of them together. You're popular with children. I looked at the small person who spoke. Was his name Galenium? There will be a royal banquet in the evening. The castle has almost collapsed and the scale will be very small, but I would like to invite you to attend. I looked up at the sky. Time remaining until the end of the scenario, 27 days. The disasters have given up the scenario and the 6th scenario is scheduled for an early termination. It might take a bit of time because of the disasters scattered throughout the world. However, once Hiroshi went around Peaceland, then the scenario would end automatically. A banquet. Was it to play and drink? Then perhaps? I understand. We will attend. It looks like you are very fond of drinking. Well, it has been hard to see then these days. I brought out a lot of distilled spirits that remained in the warehouse with Galenium's help. Peaceland's drinks had very low alcohol content, so I needed a lot to make the drink I wanted. The constellation Snake Cutter is interested in your brewing. I poured alcohol into a bucket the size of a human, threw in all the ingredients I had and started to stir. 8th head of the sovereign of 8 heads. 7th tail of the sovereign of 8 heads. These were items that came out when defeating Yamata no Orochi. They were fragments rather than proper body parts because the true body hadn't appeared. Still, they contained part of the constellation's power. It was only Yu Jonghyuk who realized what I was going to do. You know this hidden piece. Aren't I a prophet? Now give me your sword. Yu Jonghyuk knew what I was going to do and obediently offered his sword. I threw the Tatsuka no Tsurugi that I received from Yu Jonghyuk into the alcohol. Originally, it shouldn't be made like this, but I used a shortcut. The Tatsuka no Tsurugi melted into the alcohol. 2 tails give meaning to your actions. The narrative of the Sovereign of 8 Heads and the Snake Cutter has been combined. Some parts of the story are damaged due to incorrect transmission. The damaged part was a bit disappointing, but it couldn't be helped. The narrative of Aim no Murakumo no Tsurugi is expressed. According to the stories, Aim no Murakumo no Tsurugi was the sword that came out of the tail of a drunk Yamata no Orochi. However, it was possible to acquire it using a shortcut. In any case, I just needed to drink. Lee Jihai asked doubtfully, "Why did you throw the sword into the precious alcohol?" "Wait and see." A moment later, a mysterious aura flowed from the alcohol and a sword surrounded by a pure white light rose. The star relic, heavenly sword of gathering clouds, has appeared. As expected, it appeared. There was nothing wrong with the method from Ways of Survival. Yu Jonghyuk reached out his hand. "This is mine." "Hey!" We caught him together. I was the one who caught him. Usually, I would have insisted, but Yu Jonghyuk's eyes were serious this time. This son of a bitch. Of course, the relic itself wasn't my goal, but it was still bitter to have the star relic taken away right in front of me. I couldn't fight him here, so I gave up on the sword. The star relic grass-cutting sword has appeared. A knife rose from the alcohol. Eh? The contents of Ways of Survival flowed quickly through my head. Names give birth to narratives, and narratives are reproduced in reality. In the world of the star stream, Aim no Murakumo no Tsurugi has a total of 5 names. In other words, Aim no Murakumo no Tsurugi isn't one sword. I belatedly realized. Perhaps the name of Aim no Murakumo no Tsurugi was used for 5 things in total. In other words, one sword appeared in Ways of Survival and the other 4 weren't mentioned. I quickly grabbed the knife. "Then this is mine. Any complaints?" That, Yu Jonghyuk's narrowed eyes stared at me before he turned away. "Do what you want." I inwardly sighed with relief. I was satisfied with the grip of the knife in my hand. It was the second in the Aim no Murakumo no Tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword. This sword contained the power of a dragon killer. I didn't need to be afraid of any dragon species that I encountered in the future. Lee Jihai watched from the side and pouted. These petty-minded males obtained the swords. Lee Jihai joked playfully before poking the jar of alcohol. "Can we drink this now? The smell isn't a joke. You are a minor." It wasn't just Lee Jihai. People were flocking to the golden-colored alcohol. Everyone seemed to be hungry for alcohol. Well, they would become drunk just from smelling it. "Drink up, everyone." People started to drink like crazy after I gave my permission. Oh, how could it have this taste? A heavenly drink. The people drank the golden alcohol and exclaimed with joy. It was fermented with the magic power of a constellation, so it would naturally have a good taste. In fact, the alcohol content in it was insignificant, but it also had the effect of increasing stats. "Aren't you drinking?" I asked Yu Jonghyuk. I looked closer and saw that Yu Jonghyuk was making a simple dish. He was slicing and roasting meat and vegetables. It was an outdoor party, so the food ingredients brought by the small people were piled up in the area. However, Yu Jonghyuk's cooking. Yu Jonghyuk spoke in a cold tone. "I don't consume anything made by others." Are you afraid of being poisoned? It is because it isn't delicious. How delicious can the food you make? I said this, but I quickly took a bite out of the dish Yu Jong-hyuk was making. Then, no, what was this? Lee Seolwa, who was helping Yu Jong-hyuk nearby, smiled and asked me, is it delicious? Yes. It was damn delicious. Really, it was delicious. No, it was the best dish I had ever eaten. What was this meat skewer? One side of the expressionless Yu Jong-hyuk's mouth curved up. Damn. Even if he was a regressor, how could this bastard cook so well? I mumbled something and moved away when I heard something that was like a musical instrument. It was excellent music that was very calm and profound. I followed the sound and saw a doll sitting on top of the castle. It was the smallest person who was as handsome as Yu Jong-hyuk. It was Kyrios Rodgrain. He sat on the ledge and played the viola while staring at the distant sky. It was gentle and sometimes sad. It was filled with a faint longing. The noisy crowd stopped one by one and listened to the music. The exaggerated heat cooled down. First, someone's eyes reddened. Then the next person burst into tears. It seemed contagious, and they all started to cry. As if they missed the moments they had to cry, everyone burst out crying. The inhabitants of Peaceland also experienced the scenarios. This was music that comforted them. I drank a bit of the alcohol while listening to the melody. Then Asaka Ren came up to me. She hadn't joined the Japanese group. I asked her, Ren SSI, have you seen Han Soo-young? Ah. I was telling her a few settings, and she suddenly said there was a place she had to go. I see. It seemed she left to find a hidden piece. That girl. The sound of the viola spread through the broken castle, and I recalled something as I saw Asaka Ren's face. A person who had reached the end of a long dream was likely to make this face. I thought I could ask now. How do you feel? It is weird. She hesitated for a moment. I'm thinking that I shouldn't have given up. I understood immediately what she was saying. She licked her lips before opening her mouth, breaking the moist film on her mouth. Who would have thought of this when reading my manga? Someone obviously did. Asaka Ren smiled sadly and looked down at her hands. Her red cheeks made it clear she had drank a lot of alcohol. I suddenly had a thought. Maybe I'm not a member of a world someone drew. I paused before saying, perhaps it is a world that doesn't matter. Huh? There is the story I wanted to hear last time. I noticed Asaka Ren didn't understand and added a bit more explanation. Asaka Ren said, an email arrived shortly after the series ended. They wanted to borrow the setting of my manga. I was a bit surprised by the unexpected words. There was no such thing in Ways of Survival. Borrow the setting? Yes. I didn't think much about it at the time, but this situation occurred not long afterwards. Do you remember the exact details? For example, an email address or... As soon as I replied to the email, all related emails were suddenly erased. So the detailed address. I see. Asaka Ren heard something in my voice that made her feel sorry. She hesitated before adding, that, I'm not certain, but I think the email address started with a T dot. T? I became dazed and reflexively asked, could it be TLS 123? Chapter 132. Scenario Destroyer. Part 2. TLS 123. This was the ID for the author of Ways of Survival. Asaka Ren's eyes widened. Eh? TLS 123. I urged her, do you remember? Remember, eh? What is it? Asaka Ren blinked and her eyes became dazed for a moment. Faint sparks appeared around her body. Huh? I was shocked and asked, what did you just say? Huh? The words you just said. What do you mean? What did I? Asaka Ren's face showed that she didn't know anything. I felt a terrible sense of foreboding. I quietly activated Character List. The exclusive skill, Character List, is activated. Plus. Character information, name, Asaka Ren. Age, 31 years old. Constellation support, Master of the Nittanichiryu. Private attribute, Peaceland's creator, legend, mangaka, rare. Exclusive skills, Kendo LV7, Black Pen Tip LV4, Plausible Dignity and Laws LV5, Imagination Stimulation LV4. Stima, Nittanichiryu LV3. Overall stats, Physique LV55, currently LV17, Strength LV55, currently LV17, Agility LV49, currently LV11, Magic Power LV54, currently LV16. Overall evaluation, the current comprehensive evaluation is currently in progress. Plus. As I saw in Ways of Survival, this woman must be the creator of Peaceland. Then. Was it editing? The next moment, I saw the disappearance of an entire feature window in front of my eyes. Like sand, the letters scattered one by one in front of me. Plus. Private attribute, mangaka, rare. Plus. Very slowly, goosebumps crept up my spine. Why was Creator of Peaceland missing all of a sudden? It was impossible for any constellation to do this. Asaka Ren looked at me and asked, "Sorry, what were we talking about?" "We were talking about Renesai's work." "My work?" Asaka Ren made a face like she couldn't remember anything. She couldn't remember any of the settings of Peaceland that she created. At this moment, she knew that the world had completely left her hands. I had a throbbing headache. Was there such a sentence in Ways of Survival? I didn't know. However, one thing was for certain. The melody of the viola playing in the lonely night. The cries of the small people. The sad and rich atmosphere elevated by the emotions. This was the moment the world called Peaceland was completed. Now there was nothing to add to this story. Finally, one story had become completely independent from its author. I suddenly thought I understood why an attribute disappeared from Asaka Ren. The moment the world was finished, the author had to descend from the position of creator. I suddenly wondered. Where did the finished story go? You have come to know the planet Peaceland. All beings belonging to Peaceland are faintly aware of your gaze. The small planet's constellation rejoices in your presence. The beings of Peaceland have started to write legends about you. The funny thing was that I hadn't asked for it. I see. The destination of the story that left its creator was decided from the beginning. After that, I asked Asaka Ren a few more things while using lie detection. However, she really didn't remember anything. I'm sorry, I really don't know. It is like a manga I have read. It was like she read her own story. Somehow, I felt depressed. Asaka Ren closed her eyes for a moment before saying, "However, I think I enjoyed reading it." Definitely. Sadly, the information about the author of Ways of Survival that I barely managed to touch stopped here. It was still unclear what type of person the author of Ways of Survival was and what he wanted. Still, at least one thing seemed vaguely clear. Perhaps like me, the author of Ways of Survival wasn't satisfied with the existing ending. That's why he gave me this textbook before the end of the world. If so, I would meet those expectations. I stepped away from Asaka Ren, who was enjoying the scenery, and pulled out a small ampoule. Ancient Serpent's Sacred Blood. It was an item obtained with the constellation parts. I sent a signal and the distant Li Hyunsung nodded and approached. Li Hyunsung wasn't drinking. I was sorry, but I had some work for him to do today. Then I asking you. Leave it to me. Li Hyunsung was entrusted to be my guard. It was because I was going to collapse for a bit. I sprinkled the ancient serpent's sacred blood into the cup and the golden alcohol turned into a dark red. You have drank alcohol made from the ancient serpent's sacred blood. The greedy snake will test your mental power. This was a hidden piece that Yu Zhonghyuk didn't know about in the third regression. It was a ceremony that could only be done when the alcohol made from Orochi's parts was mixed with the sacred blood. I wouldn't have given up an excellent trait like King of No Killing if it hadn't been for this. The snake has confirmed your eligibility for Dragon Slayer. The new attribute 8 lives is being prepared. Good. Now that it was being prepared, I would have a new attribute when I woke up. One thing was finished and the other. I poured the remaining alcohol into my mouth. I became dizzy and felt drunk. However, I couldn't fall asleep right away. I sat on the ground and wrote a message. God of wine and ecstasy. Why? Dionysus was unresponsive despite the joyful atmosphere. The same was true for Persephone. It was a difficult situation. I accomplished my task, but there was no one to take me to the underworld. Should I bring you Senga over? If there was a direct terminus with Olympus, then I could send the signal right away. Father of the rich knight. It happened when I wrote Hades modifier. An eerie aura swept over my body. I was filled with the urge to vomit, and when I opened my eyes again, I realized that I had already come to the underworld. This disturbing and unpleasant air could only be felt in the underworld. Looking around, it was fortunate that I hadn't fallen into Tartarus. Someone was standing in front of me. You shouldn't enter the underworld right now. It wasn't Hades or Persephone. I could tell the moment I saw the outfit resembling the envoy. Judge Nim. It wasn't the judge who guided me last time. I replied to him, I came to report that I've completed the queen's task. I know. Once again, you can't enter the palace. Why? I can't tell you that. The judge waved his hand like it was troublesome. Go back. I summoned you using the power of the Father, but it is impossible for you to enter. I have an appointment with the queen. I must enter. You can't right now. Go back. What type of crap was this? Despite his strength, the judge was minuscule compared to Persephone. Still, looking at this stubbornness. Perhaps they are both away? The judge hesitated before nodding. That's right. What's going on? Hades and Persephone were absent at the same time. I didn't know what it was, but there was a high probability that something big had happened. If it was an emergency meeting for the 12 gods of Olympus, but was there anything worth making that summons at this point? Did they leave something for me? Something I can pick up if I arrive. Why should I tell you if there was such a thing? I knew that the judges had different personalities, but I didn't expect to be caught by such a tough one. Based on the way he talked, there must be something. There was no way that the meticulous Persephone would have just left. It couldn't be helped. I'll let you take a sip of this if you help me. I took out the Yamada no Orochi alcohol that I had placed into a bottle in my coat. I opened the lid and the smell of sweet fermented liquor spread. Tea, that is. The judge was shocked. For a person who had lived a long time, alcohol was like drugs. It was the only means to forget the tragedy of the long years. This wasn't alcohol, but alcohol made from the parts of a constellation. HHRMM. If you don't like it, then I can go. Wait a minute. I understand. I'll give you the thing that the queen left. He ate the bait. This was completely different from the harsh judge I saw last time. Good. The judge grinned with satisfaction after taking a sip and pulled out a yellow bead. Here, take it and go. It was a bright yellow bead. I realized it was the soul of Shin Yusung that I had been eagerly looking for. I rubbed the bead several times, and it shone with a faint light as it floated in the air. I placed my hand on the bead and thought, I'm sorry, am I late? The bead only screamed, like she had lost most of her language. A woman who lost her words and her memories. Despite dedicating her life to the scenario, the only story left to her was a horrible history of pain. This was what a normal person would say. You've gone through enough, so rest and take it easy. However, Shin Yusung couldn't rest. She still had work to do in this world. Juicy. The soul trembled after a long time. Really? Yes. Why? You still have work left to do in this world. I didn't come here because I sympathized with her. I did it because I needed Shin Yusung's help. There was something that only she could do with the story she built up for a long time. Shin Yusung responded with slight fear. What should I do? I touched her soul and showed her some of my thoughts. Shin Yusung was silent for a while before she burst out laughing. Ha ha, ha, a cruel person, a juicy, in a way, you are more cruel than the captain, I'm sorry. But, okay. I accept. No. I want to do it. This is what I want. This time, I want to see the ending of this world. Your memories might disappear. Can you endure it? Shin Yusung nodded. I'm not afraid. A juicy. I'll believe in what you told me. Finally, Shin Yusung's soul disappeared back into the bead. She probably wouldn't come out for a while. The moment we would meet again was after she gained a physical body. The judge watched us and opened his mouth. As you might know, the body isn't resurrected just by taking the soul out of the world. Moreover, it is impossible for the soul to settle into a new body after a long time. The judge chuckled. There might be a way with reincarnation, but this soul has committed so many sins that it won't be born again as a human. If you want her to be born again as a human, then you have to throw away all the stories of the soul. In that case, she won't be the person you knew. I know. As Persephone said, the soul was a story. Even now, Shin Yusung's soul was becoming not Shin Yusung. However, that wasn't the only path for Shin Yusung. I immediately called to someone. Bai Hyung. He was silent. I waited, looking down at the bead until Bai Hyung responded. Only high-value beings could choose the body a soul was reincarnated in. She had been dominated by the story so far, and now she would be reborn as the ruler of the story. I finally felt Bai Hyung through the channel. I opened my mouth. I need your help. What help? I didn't answer. Bai Hyung was silent as he glanced between me and Shin Yusung's soul. He soon noticed the meaning of my words. Surely, you want me to do that? I nodded. Hey, think about it. It isn't as easy as you think. It might be better off if she disappears here. Do you want to ruin your channel? Shit. Hey, this is really... I've never done this before. We will try it from now on. Fuck. Bai Hyung hesitated for a long time before finally giving me a golden egg. The egg from the greatest star story came down. I put Shin Yusung's soul into this egg. The egg trembled and gave off a brilliant light before it flew up into the sky again. Bai Hyung couldn't say anything for a long time before muttering in an absurd way. I never thought I would receive a child this way. My enemies weren't just inside the scenarios. The Shin Yusung of the 41st regression, she would be the only streamer for me in this round. Chapter 133. Scenario Destroyer. Part 3. The negotiations with Bai Hyung finished and the judge urged me. If it is over, then go back. The judge was absent-mindedly staring at my liquor bottle again. It seemed that he hadn't drank enough. Wait. He said that Hades and Persephone wasn't present right now? Hey, Judge Nim. One more thing. I don't know what it is this time, but I'll give you the bottle. The judge's eyes flashed at my words. Please take me to Tartarus again. There was no time, so I went down to Tartarus and then came back up again. It was only a short time, but the judge was already drunk. Then are you done? Yes. Hades and Persephone being away was a divine move for me. I only gave a bit of information, but if I knew Kim Namwon, that alone would make a big difference. I was looking forward to the gigantomachia that would arrive one day. There is a message that the Queen left. The Queen? Yes. I will directly recite it. The judge repeated Persephone's words in a profound voice. Incarnation Kim Dokja, you have completed the task in a very interesting way. Many nebulae in the star stream are now watching you. Many of them are hostile towards you. In fact, this scenario had caught too much attention from the constellations. You should be prepared. I became a bit nervous after listening to the story. Was this related to Hades and Persephone's departure? The reactions from the other large constellations had noticeably decreased a while ago. In particular, Oriel. Please note that Oriel was part of the Eden Nebula. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband feels sorry. The constellation Secretive Plotter is comforting Prisoner of the Golden Headband. These guys were still here. Then go well. I nodded. There was no point worrying about it now. The important thing was to build up my stories. Some nebulae might despise me like Persephone said, but it wasn't everyone. There was a distant whirlwind and my field of view gradually changed. Once I opened my eyes again, I had returned. Dr. SSI. There was a strange tension in the voice. I hit my cheeks to come to my senses. Then I saw Li Hyansung's anxious face and asked, what happened? The people around us were buzzing. Li Jihai and the others were all crowded around one place. In the air, traces of a distorted space were appearing. A portal. It was the pathway that my companions and I had gone through. Why was this thing open? Hadn't the scenario ended? Li Hyansung explained, the second South Korean group has shown up. The second group? They came now? I'm not really sure. There was a sense that the second group had come too late. Usually, the second group appeared a week after the first group, but this time, the personnel supplement didn't occur until after the scenario ended. It was different from Japan, whose third group were deployed in an instant. Li Hyansung and I headed towards the portal. Juicy, this way. I headed in the direction of Li Jihai's voice, and then a man appeared from the portal. His whole body was charcoal, as if he had been burned all over. This man was someone I knew. I asked with a shocked expression, Young Minsiab SSI? What is this? Young Minsiab. He was one of the few readers who was on my side when I was fighting the prophets. I thought he had died after the War of Kings, because I hadn't seen his face for a while. Why was he here? Li Silwa appeared and started to treat young Minsiab. However, it was already too late. At the last minute, young Minsiab met my eyes and muttered towards me. Don't come back. They were young Minsiab's last words. You have protected the peace of Peaceland. A huge string was shining in the air. There was still a festive atmosphere, but the expressions of my party members were different. Li Jihai wondered in a confused voice, what the hell is this? It was a situation where the scenario wasn't completely closed, so it wasn't unusual for additional personnel to be dispatched. Yet the extra personnel was injured from the beginning. Was there a case like this in Japan? Asaka Ren shook her head at Li Hyansung's question. Perhaps they were attacked by something when crossing the portal. Is that possible? There were times when there were dimensional species living in the portal. However, based on my memories, that didn't happen in this scenario. Then Li Jihai gave her opinion. Perhaps the remaining people are fighting among themselves? I didn't want it to be like that, but it was the most realistic guess. Asukren nodded and added, there is no absolute throne on the South Korean side? Yes. Then this isn't likely. Japan was currently in similar situation. In countries that weren't affected by the absolute throne, the leaders of a group often changed. As far as I knew, this happened a few times in ways of survival. This situation was a bit surprising. It was still the early stages of the scenario. If the isolated ones joined together, their strength still wasn't high enough. Moreover, Seoul had prepared a contingency plan. There was Yusanga, Yonghee-won, and my mother, the King of Wanderers. It was impossible for a new leadership group to emerge as long as they were there. The eyes of the party members were anxious. Perhaps, it can't be. None of the scheduled second group had come. Only young Minsiab arrived, and he was in a dying state. There was even the message, don't go back. I could guess a few possibilities, but we won't know for certain unless we go back. When did he appear? Yu Jongyuk spoke from beside me. I nodded at his words. You are correct. Let's go back and check it. Then the scenario message was heard. Additional compensation for the major contributors has arrived. Major contributors, Kim Dokja, Yoo Jong-hyuk. Finally, the main scenario rewards had arrived. Do you want to check the compensation history? I nodded. Rewards list. 1. Moonwave folded fan, SSS grade. 2. Blue dragon sword, SSS. 3. Magic King's bracelet, SS grade. 4. A choice of one of the following A-grade skills. There were a total of 4 rewards. The compensation list was considerable because the scenario was very difficult. The items such as Moonwave folded fan and Blue dragon would show strength comparable to star relics after they were gradually enhanced. There would be no damages. In addition, there was the Magic King's bracelet. This was a good item to defend against beginner and intermediate spells from magic-based returnees. However, I had obtained the grass-cutting sword and the first 2 items weren't very advantageous. The Magic King's bracelet was intriguing, but the value was reduced unless I met a returnee. Thus, the answer was fixed from the beginning. I will pick the 4th option. A list of skills appeared in front of me. The reason for the increase in rating was because the skills that appeared mainly belonged to the Muram system. Manifestation of Nature, New Feat Small Yang Sword. Tai Chi Blurred Palms. There were the exquisite techniques of the Shaolin school or famous ones like the 24 Plum Blossoms swordsmanship. Every one was a skill I coveted, but I only had one choice, so I had to be careful. As I mentioned last time, regardless of the skills level, some skills were highly difficult to obtain. There would be a chance to get the Muram skills again, but if I missed this chance, there was a skill I would never get. For example, the Peaceland Limited A- grade skill. I will pick the A-grade skill, miniaturization. Lee Jai-hai saw my choice and screamed, "A juicy, are you crazy? Why? Why would you choose such a thing? It is too stressful to be small. I would rather you choose the Blue Dragon Sword and give it to me." Lee Hyansung also looked surprised. The kids didn't care and were playing with each other. On the other hand, the small people looked strangely touched. They probably thought I chose this skill to remember them. Now that the compensation has ended, it is time to go back. I'm sure you've become attached to each other, but please say goodbye. The Dakibi made an announcement and then a huge portal appeared in the air. Gilemium and the small people gathered around us. Go carefully. Thank you. I'll definitely remember you. The small people sang a song of farewell for us. Asaka Ren's eyes reddened. The Japanese group also disappeared into the portal. My party members were the last ones to leave. The song of the small people continued. I kept listening and seemed to hear some lyrics. Hero who saved Peaceland. His name. It isn't Dakuja Dokja. Oh, it is Dokja. Shit, what were these lyrics? The beings of Peaceland are linked to your legend. This achievement can be viewed after becoming a constellation. On top of a bell tower, I could see Kyrios looking at me. I thought he would run this way and make all sorts of threats after the scenario was over, but he just watched quietly. Asaka told me, I think he appreciates you. Huh? It is just a feeling. I don't know why. Asaka Ren smiled at me. Her qualifications as a creator might be lost, but the author was still one of the readers. Let's survive and meet again, people of South Korea. Asaka Ren bowed and disappeared into the portal. Then we also entered. My vision swirled, and once I came to my senses, my feet were touching the ground. I wasn't too dizzy since I had experienced it once before. The main scenario has ended. The view of Seoul entered my eyes. I looked around and Yoo Jong-hyuk was the only one who arrived at the same place as me. We might have entered the same portal, but the exits were different. Still, why was I with this person? Kim Dokja, move. The moment Yoo Jong-hyuk spoke, the ground where we were standing exploded. The magic bullets that flew over turned this area into a mess. The Supreme King. Don't panic. Shoot. They aren't on the same side anyway. Leave the Supreme King and go for the King of No Killing. In a way, it was an expected ambush. Dozens of people were gathered beyond the dust clouds. At first glance, they had a great deal of equipment and had sponsors. Were they incarnations belonging to other nebulae like Persephone had warned me about? The answer was still unknown. He can't kill anyone. There is a penalty if he kills. Therefore, don't hesitate. There is a possibility that he collected points and will revive again. Don't miss the time of revival and kill him. When had that information leaked? They even knew the information of King of No Killing. After a moment, the person leading them appeared through the dust. Kim Dokja. Slowly put down your weapon and come this way. I listened to his words. As they came closer, their armed appearance became clear. Each person was wearing A-grade equipment and their overall stats were outstanding. They wouldn't be pushed by the Wanderers group that my mother led. Where the hell had these people come from? The leader smirked at me like it was already over. I smiled at him and asked, "Where did you get my information? What are you going to do?" "I will let you know that one part is wrong." "What?" "Blade of Faith is activated." Blade of Faith was pulled out and instantly cut the leader and his men who were surrounding me.